Tom Bauer has released a report that many consider the most significant royal revelation of our modern era, moving beyond mere gossip to challenge the very core of the Sussex narrative. This is not about fleeting headlines or bruised egos. Rather, it focuses on documentation, specific dates, and confidential discussions that were never intended for public consumption. According to various insiders, these private exchanges are now circulating in transcript form, and they align uncomfortably well with the details Bauer is bringing to light. Before we finish, you will understand why questions surrounding medical records and a previously unmentioned figure linked to Colombia have suddenly entered the discourse. Yes, the nation of Colombia is involved, and we will clarify why this development has reportedly left Prince Harry in a state of deep distress, rendering standard denials insufficient to halt the momentum. What follows is not idle speculation, but a narrative constructed from matching dates, movements, and private remarks that are now colliding in the public sphere. So pay close attention, because this door cannot be closed once opened. If these claims were entirely without merit, a single decisive action could have silenced them instantly. A simple biological verification. No podcasts, legal teams, or mediators would be necessary, just one scientific test with one conclusive result to end the story immediately. However, the issue remains that no such verification was offered publicly or privately, nor was any intention to do so leaked to the press. Instead, reports suggest the reaction involved intense anger, with doors slammed, advisors cut off, and threats of lawsuits replacing the quiet confidence of certainty. True certainty does not require volume, it requires evidence, and Tom Bauer understood the strategy perfectly by avoiding direct accusations in favor of a more surgical approach. He implied that if the narrative were false, verification would end it, yet the continued lack of transparency has become louder than any verbal denial. When a definitive solution is available but remains unused, it inevitably forces a difficult question regarding what people are afraid the results might reveal. We must now address the topic many have avoided for years due to discomfort: the documentation surrounding the birth of the firstborn son. According to Bauer, the protocol surrounding this event deviated sharply from established royal traditions, a point based on comparison rather than mere conjecture. There were no named physicians, no standard hospital confirmations, and a lack of the usual medical disclosures, replaced instead by vague announcements and carefully managed appearances. While each detail might be explained in isolation, collectively, they create a pattern, and patterns are often where serious inquiries begin. Bauer did not claim this proves a specific conclusion, but he noted that the deviation from procedure matters because the monarchy relies heavily on established protocol. When these protocols are broken and followed by silence, suspicion naturally fills the void, and reports suggest even Harry began privately asking why the events felt so insulated. Once such a doubt enters a person's mind, it rarely leaves quietly. Instead, it waits for the next piece of the puzzle. We must now follow the trail that made these doubts persistent, because the narrative reportedly extends beyond London and leads directly to South America. We need to be clear. that the inclusion of this location is not accidental in this account. According to Bauer, it was not a one-time diplomatic visit, but a recurring theme. The travel timelines allegedly did not align cleanly, with charity trips overlapping with unexplained gaps and private aviation used where commercial flights were expected. Within those overlaps, the Duchess was reportedly moving through social circles that did not entirely fit the public image she was curating at the time. Then there is the mention of a specific influential figure, not a celebrity or royal, but a person of significant financial standing and access who avoids the spotlight. His name had not appeared in mainstream reporting previously, but online researchers began to notice that the dates seemed to converge in a way that was hard to ignore. Every time this connection resurfaced, it coincided with moments where the personal narrative became unusually guarded or details became scarce. The shifting of announcements and the tightening of medical privacy were not proof in themselves, but they contributed to a pattern where public skepticism began to solidify. The Internet eventually noticed the anomalies, much to the surprise of institutions that expected these details to remain unobserved. An anonymous account reportedly posted a single image showing a candid moment in a luxury setting, featuring the Duchess in a stance that appeared far more personal than professional. She was pictured with a man who was clearly not the prince, displaying a body language that suggested familiarity rather than formal acquaintance. Observers immediately analyzed the image, noting that the man's stature and demeanor were distinct from Harry's, projecting a confidence derived from wealth rather than royal lineage. A specific detail, a distinct accessory on his wrist, was quickly matched by Internet users to the previously mentioned figure from earlier promotional footage. The account was deleted with professional speed, but screenshots persist, proving that digital footprints are difficult to erase completely. Tom Bauer then delivered the line that stunned observers, implying that the lineage of the child might not be what the public believes, using implications sharp enough to cause damage without stating names. This brought renewed attention to Trevor Engelson, her former husband, who had largely been written out of the narrative like a prologue that no longer fit. He had remained silent during her rise and the royal wedding, but accounts suggest he is now sharing his perspective on how the dynamic shifted. He described a transition where ambition seemed to overtake intimacy, and where secrecy began to replace transparency as her career gained international momentum. He reportedly recalled specific moments where he felt like an outsider in his own marriage, witnessing interactions that felt strategic rather than emotional. Engelson described encounters that left him uneasy, including meeting individuals he did not recognize who seemed entirely too comfortable in her space. When confronted, he claimed the situation was reframed as a networking necessity, a concept he was told he wouldn't understand because it involved people who changed lives. This context made the resurfacing of the Columbia connection years later particularly unsettling for those who knew the history. The story then pivots to the current marriage, where the external noise allegedly became too loud for Prince Harry to ignore any longer. According to the report, Harry did not break down publicly, but struggled privately, where there were no scripts to mask his reaction. Friends reportedly noticed his temper flaring and a fixation on public commentary, leading him to ask questions about timelines he had previously avoided. Once those questions take root, they demand answers, leading to the alleged moment where he finally asked why a simple test couldn't be performed. The account states that the reaction was not one of reassurance, but of offense, reframing the request as a betrayal of trust and a surrender to their critics. She allegedly argued that this was not about the truth, but about him siding with the media and the mob against his own wife. Harry reportedly countered that his concern was not about external optics, but about his own fundamental need for certainty regarding his family. The response was reportedly an ultimatum, suggesting that pursuing this verification would destroy their relationship. A stance that places the preservation of the narrative above the search for clarity. Truth generally does not fear inspection, and Harry allegedly left the interaction without a resolved answer, as the speculation outside continued to grow. Anonymous sources, claiming to be former staff, have since suggested that administrative delays regarding titles were linked to these unresolved documentation issues. Buckingham Palace has maintained its characteristic silence, which has unfortunately fed the rumors rather than extinguishing them. The public is no longer just asking if the story is true. They are asking why it has not been definitively disproven. Once doubt is established, the truth becomes secondary, leaving the prince in a position where he may be realizing his life's rebellion was based on a story he never fully verified. Whether the suspicion is justified or not is almost irrelevant now, because the uncertainty itself is damaging enough to erode the foundation of their new life. The carefully constructed image is fracturing, and the world is waiting not for more legal threats, but for the only thing that matters: proof. As long as that verification remains absent, the silence will continue to amplify the rumors, making it increasingly difficult to believe there is a clean resolution. This is not merely the end of a chapter. It is the precarious moment before the truth either redeems the situation or dismantles it entirely.